I asked Darius Rucker, from most famous from being the singer of Hootie and the Blowfish. I said, Darius, would you like Star Wars or Batman? And he chose Batman. So I threw a red fleece blanket and a Batman fleece blanket from my son's room over 2 mic stands in a arrow shape. I put the mic right in the middle so I didn't have any off-axis reflections.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lynda Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lynda Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Cowboy Keith Thompson, record producer, live sound engineer, tour manager, and record label owner. Inglehood Records is a boutique label based out of East Nashville, Tennessee, that makes classic-style recordings of vintage hits from the 40s and 60s with its hip rhythm and horn sections. Originally hailing from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Keith was a bar owner, children's TV show host, radio host, record producer, and live sound engineer there before he moved to Nashville 20 years ago to pursue pro live sound engineering, doing live sound for the likes of Peter Cetera and even Wonder Woman's Lynda Carter. That's cool, man.
Just with her yesterday.
Some of Keith's credits include managing the original Blues Brothers band featuring Steve Cropper, Lou Marini, Tom Malone, John Tropea, Murphy Dunne, and Leon Pendarvis, and producing BR549, Crush Boy, and Cameo, to name a few. When he is not running his label, producing records, or touring, he records and mixes all the music performances for the hit CMT TV show, Sun Records. Please welcome Cowboy Keith Thompson to Recording Studio Rockstars. Keith, or should I call you Cowboy?
Cowboy's fine.
Cowboy, are you ready to rock?
I'm ready to rock.
Dude, I know it. So welcome, man. Great to have you here in the studio, and it's cool, man. I've known you for a long time, but we've never really gotten a chance to sit down and just talk about recording like this.
I think I see you more at my neighbor's house than anywhere else.
That's right. Another guest on the show, Mr. Chad Brown.
Grammy winner, Chad Brown.
Grammy winner, and there it is right there on the studio wall there. I'm shamelessly plugging that Grammy credit as best I can. Well, so, I've done a brief introduction, but kind of fill in the gaps for us and tell us more about how you got started out in this. And I like to throw a twist on it. Tell us, what did starting out in recording smell like to you?
What it smelled like? Well, originally it smelled like a moldy basement at Bob Lamb's house in Maple Shade, New Jersey, which is a suburb of Philadelphia, about 7 minutes from the Liberty Bell over the Ben Franklin Bridge.
Nice.
And I had a Radio Shack PA system and a cassette deck that I recorded out of the line out of the Radio Shack PA head.
So would you just record straight to cassette and then be done with it? Or would you do the whole double cassette thing where you'd keep layering stuff?
No, at that time, it was just, cassette. But I used to do sound over sound recordings with a reel-to-reel when I was like 9 at my parents' house.
Is it possible that people with single cassette decks would kind of frown on double cassette decks? Like, that's not real playing. Real players only have to record once on a cassette. They don't need to layer it.
I don't know. There's the whole new cassette movement among the indie rockers. Maybe they'll have some rules that we're not aware of.
That's true. I had an artist here who recorded his album, and when he went to go release it on cassette, he wanted to have, his band is called Quiche Night, and so he wanted to have the exact right yellow color for his cassettes. So he found this company like up in Wisconsin, of course, or somewhere like that was still printing cassettes and could make them the just right yellow.
Wow. That's commitment. I'll give him that. That is seeing your vision through.
You got to be committed to do this for sure. Well, so tell us more about where'd you go from there? I mean, so you sort of grew up in Philadelphia doing this, and it sounds like you did a bunch of cool stuff before you moved to Nashville.
I was a really bad guitar player. So everybody goes, why don't you do the sound? Why don't you do the recording? So I was like, oh, okay. And I have to tell people I've been playing guitar since I've been 14 years old, and I'm just as good now as I was then.
Nice, man. I've been playing guitar since I was 14, and I've been recording since I was 15.
And then I got a Fostex 4-track that had inserts. Like, that was a big deal for me. It's like, all right, I got this Fostex all-in-one. I was like 17. I got this all-in-one recorder, you know, the little mixing board next to it. So it wasn't just like the knobs on a small thing. It was like to me, it was amazing. And I had a 160X compressor that I would insert.
Oh, yeah. Is that with the slider on it?
The slider on a half rack. It came with the noise built in. And I had a DSP 128 that I could use in the aux send and return into a stereo return. I mean, I thought I hit the big time. And I recorded a bunch of stuff with that. And I built a control room in my parents' attic, the corner of my bedroom, which was like a large refinished attic.
Nice. And
we set up the drums. I moved the bed out of there, got a futon, and we just recorded it every day after school. That's all we did.
You think there's a big difference sort of at the core of studios that were begun in basements versus studios that were begun in attics? Attics always have that angled ceiling, you know, you got that long.
Yeah, you know, I think it might affect the sound. You know, you definitely got to put your room mic long ways, right, at the end of the room.
You know, Motown would do that, right? They were using their attics for the echo chambers. I remember hearing that they would do stuff like, there was a trick where they would take a basketball and bounce it on the snare beats and record the splash in the attic as their echo.
Wow. Cool.
Thought that was kind of cool.
I didn't know that.
Did you ever do that?
I never did that, no.
What were some cool attic tricks that you remember doing?
Well, because the ceiling was low, I was able to duct tape a Radio Shack PZM mic to the ceiling over the drums for cymbals. And I had
Did you do a pair of them? Sort of, was the ceiling angled like a left-right right above the drums?
I think financially I had one.
Right.
So I had one of those duct taped to the ceiling over the drums because it was so low. And then I got some of that egg crate mattress foam you buy from Kmart, and I stapled that to just the walls on the side so the ceiling would be live. And then I had 3 other Radio Shack mics, one kind of between the rack tom, the snare, and the hi-hat, and one over on the floor tom, and one on the kick drum. And I had a line mixer, all Radio Shack. Let me tell you,
yeah,
it was a big
Radio Shack
source
was
for
the place.
And it took a 9-volt battery. It was just straight line mixer. And I put all the mics into line mixer and recorded all the drums into one channel. So I submixed all 4 of those mics into one channel on the Fostex. And we would cut bass and guitar.
So wait, using all those mics you just described was just to capture the drums, or was to capture the whole band?
Just the drums.
Just the drums, all right.
It was just the drums. And they were all 1/4-inch mics, you know,
yeah,
with a switch on them, you know.
So you were just kind of putting a mic near each part of the drums that you wanted to hear more of, essentially, right?
And I would just kind of balance it out, record a couple seconds of it, play it back, make adjustments, and say, okay, and plug the bass through the DBX 160X into the bass channel, and guitar was I think I actually had a 57, and put that on the guitar, which was the Sun amp.
Oh, those are
solid
great.
state.
Nice.
And then we would record all that. Then I'd spend a lot of time mixing that and bounce that down to one track. And then we would do keyboards and vocals and harmony vocals. And that was it.
Nice. Keyboards, vocals, and harmony vocals.
Over and over and over.
The whole band was sort of on the 3 tracks, bounced to one track, and then you just fill out the remaining.
Yeah, we didn't
3,
really
right?
have a separate keyboard player, so we kind of played our own keys after the fact.
There was something really fun about recording that way too, where there's this whole journey process of collecting the music and putting it on a track. So it's almost like you spent less time worrying about how it all sounded. You know, you just kind of, as long as it was cool.
Well, we wanted it to sound good. That was definitely what I wanted the end result to be. I wanted people to not, and I guess it's still kind of carried over to my life now. So I wanted people to think I made it in capital A, but I made it in a bedroom in Maple Shade.
Nice.
And today I kind of I think that's always carried through my whole life, is that I've always had the weirdest, most bizarre, crappiest recording setups. And I said, I want to get the best I can possibly get out of this crap. And so far, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, but.
Well, you're doing a lot of really cool recordings now. Give us just a really brief introduction to what you're doing with your label and recording out of your studio and stuff.
All right. Well, Inglehood Records came out of the lack of a record of the singer of the original Blues Brothers band. And that's Tommy McDonald. And he had recorded commercials for Wendy's and Amtrak and was recognized in New York as one of the greatest jingle singers. He was a member of the Nuff Brothers, all this really cool stuff, but he never made his own record, ever. I said, what, are you kidding me? He's like, nah, he's from the Bronx. He goes, nah, I never made a record. I don't know. I said, well, come to Nashville. We'll knock it out in a couple days. He goes, you can't just do that. I'm like, It's Nashville. Yes, we can. So
Yes,
we went
we
to Joe Pisappia's studio and cut the rhythm tracks in over 2 days, and then overdubbed over another 2 days his vocals and background girls and a couple horns. And then I realized I could do it in my house. And then all I have is, at the time, I had a PC and I had a Scarlett, 1080i? It's eight in, 8 out, $500 USB.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's what I recorded on up until May of 2016. I added a UA thing. It's a knob looking thing. I don't even know what it's called. It's got dual in the name.
Right. Yeah.
And
the
Chad
the
Brown told me to buy it.
Right.
He goes, you need to have that. I'm like, okay. So
That's
now I
great.
can do 10 tracks.
Now you can do 10 tracks, and you have a volume knob.
And it's very large. You can
one,
see it very easily.
And a few cool lights on there too.
And what's cool too is it also allows me to have a separate, not individual headphone mixes, but a separate headphone mix than the playback on the monitors. It's not all one volume control now, that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't do much other than get rid of some latency issues that I had. So.
Yeah, which is that's one of the struggles I think sometimes with modern recording home studio setups, right?
Especially when you're doing it bargain basement like me.
Yeah. So where did you run into the latency? Can you describe when it would creep up on you and what you would do to deal with it?
People could not hear what they played before they were punched in. I just say, play along and I'll punch you in and you won't even know where, and hopefully we'll get it.
Right.
That's how we used to punch in mistakes. We'd cut everything live. We don't do one track at a time stuff.
Right.
And like when we overdub a horn section, it's the whole horn section. It's not a sax here and a trumpet there. And I like to do everything as live as possible. So we have punched the whole band without hearing the playback.
Really?
Yes.
So you just
without hearing
say,
the
"Here
play
comes,"
through, I should say.
Just play along? Or they don't hear what they just played?
They just hear the track, and I punch them in, and we hope we get lucky because they don't hear what they played, what they're playing leading up to it.
Yeah.
So you couldn't hear like the straight in against the return. It was one or the other. Otherwise, there'd be like a...
Yeah, right, right. So I have a Pro Tools HDX here, and sort of having worked on the Pro Tools TDM systems, I got used to latency being a non-issue, sort of like not having to think about it.
Yeah.
And then when I have tried to switch over to native systems, depending on what I do and how I use it, it might or might not be an issue. But it is one of those things that you just got to be aware of. And sometimes I think people, when they're just starting out, they might not even know what that's all about, or they might take it for granted that everything sounds a little funny in the headphones, you know?
Yeah, I guess I just kind of dealt with it as I went.
Yeah. Well, you knew what it was when you heard it, right?
Yeah,
Probably.
I was
you
aware.
recognize it.
I don't care how low I set it, it was still there.
Yeah, totally. All right, cool. Well, so now you brought me a nice care package for the studio. Is this Tommy right here?
That's Tommy McDonald, yeah.
That's great.
It's him
That
right
looks
on.
awesome.
I made a pouch out of a Tommy McDonald poster.
It says right here on the poster, it says free live concert videotaping, 30-minute show, beer and pizza.
Beer and pizza.
I love it. Those are a couple of studio staples for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's back up for a sec and talk about live sound, because you do a ton of live sound as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about your live sound experience, and then tell us, how does live sound sort of transition into, helping you make a great record in the studio?
I'll start with a bold statement, and I say this all the time. Any live sound guy who has a basic knowledge of recording can print and mix a recording. But a guy who lives in the studio and doesn't do live sound could not step in and do a live sound show without the help of like a live engineer. I mean, he could ultimately mix it, but there's got to be somebody that sets up the gain structure. And so that's the fundamental difference that I find, that I see. And that's why I prefer live sound, because I take it through every step from game structure all the way through the final product. And
it's kind of like tracking, doing the tracking and all the recording and mixing it in the studio.
And the master is showtime. There you go. There's your final product. And either the crowd likes it or don't. And you have to deal with the sound that is emanating from the stage other than what is happening in your electronics. So you have to strike a balance between what's happening in front of you. And that's why the real definition is sound reinforcement.
I was just about to say that. That's why they call it sound reinforcement, right?
The guys that try to mix over the volume of the band are the guys that fall on their face. The guy that tried to mix with the volume of the band are the guys you read about in Pro Sound News.
Nice. Well, I've always really appreciated it when I go out to see a show and it's not screaming loud, but sounds killer. Like you just get lost in the music, you know?
Yeah.
That's tricky to do.
Knock on music stand. I hope that's what people walk away from my shows. I try to mix quiet. Sometimes I get yelled at. There's a guy in Panama that was screaming in my ear that it was too quiet. I was mixing at 98, peaking on 102. And he's like, you don't understand how Panamanians like music. They like it really loud. And I'm like, well, that guy singing on stage writes my check, and he likes it
just like
loud,
this,
just loud enough.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I've been going to the Bonnaroo Festival for 12 years. It's going to be my 13th year going down there. And so, you know, go walk in front of a lot of stages and hear stuff. And it's always remarkable to me, too, how different it sounds coming off a stage than it does, you know, a record out of a pair of speakers in the studio. It's probably one of the reasons why I never, you know, gravitate towards live sound, is because I think I just appreciate the control of a studio environment. And I think it takes a real skill to control that sound, you know, and make a live show sound really good.
Well, and something you don't generally deal with in the studio that you deal with live is there is feedback.
Yeah. There's also not a sweet spot.
Yeah, there's definitely not a sweet spot. There's never a sweet spot.
You got to mix for like a whole variety of experiences, right?
And it's gotta sound good for every part of the room too.
Right.
Not just in between your headphones or in between your speakers in your home stereo.
What are some things that help you make it sound good for every part of the room? What are the considerations that typically you are thinking about?
So, I mean, I'll try to understand the question.
Well, so you're at the console and you're obviously trying to make it sound good for yourself at the console, but what things do you find yourself always being aware of? Like, if, you know, up there near the front of the stage, what things do you do so it sounds great for that person as well?
A lot of people take the whole mix and put it in the downstage fills, which are the little speakers on the lip of the stage for the people in the front row, because the PA generally is firing past them. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think that is insane. To me, they're sitting 3 feet from the stage. They can hear everything that band is doing. There's a couple direct instruments that don't have amps pointing at them, and that is some keyboards and acoustic guitar. So the only thing I really put in those downstage fills are vocals, piano, and acoustic instruments, and just enough of them because they can still hear them coming off the stage. You know, every venue I go into that has an install, they got a matrix going right to those downstage fills, and I'm like, no. Right. just give me a mono aux. They're like, well, it's like, just give me a mono aux, because I only want the things that I really want in there that are going to accent what they're hearing 3 feet from the stage.
Now, how do you know? Do you have a remote control where you can walk down there and go dial it in for yourself or something like that?
I'm not a very electronic guy, so I just walk down and listen and then walk back and fix it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating though, because, you know, when you're doing live sound, you're actually creating a multitude of mixes. And when you're in the studio, you're creating one mix, but maybe checking it a multitude of ways, I guess.
It's definitely a different animal. I've watched some really good studio guys that I love and respect fall on their face, and I felt really bad, you know?
Well, I got asked by a longtime friend of mine to go mix for his band reunion, and I learned the hard way that you can't put vocal compression like you do in the studio on the mics for the stage if it's also feeding the monitors.
Yeah. If you're doing monitors in front of house, you squash it, the harder they sing, the quieter those monitors get.
Yeah, and the louder the feedback was getting. Yeah. So
well, it pushes it all into a nice little cycling area when you compress it. Like, now this going to pop up and now everything's going to ring.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely a hard thing to step out of the studio and go do that.
Yeah, a secret to that, if you're doing monitors in front of house, bring a Y splitter. Split one channel for monitors and one channel for front of house. And you can just do that right at the console. Yeah. You don't even need a separate monitor console and splitter. If you know really what needs to be in the monitors, you can say you got 5 things that, like vocals and acoustic instruments in a club, that have to be in monitors. You bring 5 little Hoja, Y splitters, or make them yourself, which is what I do because I got tired of buying them and them breaking. Yeah. And my friend Martin Kicklighter helps me make them. And I just, pop them in. So if I'm doing a club show with, say, Chuck Mead from BR549, I'll bring splitters and do monitors in front of house. And it's like having a little monitor console next to every channel that you need in the monitors.
Interesting. Well, so let's transition from that consideration where you're trying to create a mix that works for you, but you're also trying to make sure the musicians can hear themselves and take it into the studio. What do you want to tell us about making sure musicians can hear themselves and perform really, really well in the studio?
Well, there's number one thing that transcends no matter what kind of sound you're doing, live sound, recorded sound, sound for TV and film, sound for anything. And that's the number one thing is if you don't have good musicians, you don't have anything.
Right.
You got to have the best musicians. And if you have a band that are a band and they're together and they work together all the time, and maybe one or two of the guys aren't as good as the other guys, you have to learn how to lean on their strengths. So that's the first thing I think of in the studio as well as live. Is live, it's maybe a little bit of lifeboat. Maybe that one guitar player, I kind of darken him up and leave the other guy who plays really well a little brighter on top. And you can still hear him, but the other guy's a little more present. And in the studio...
more supportive, the guy who's not so great.
Yeah, in the studio, I try to say, listen, maybe you should let your buddy play both guitar parts and you play the straight rhythm and try to play on the strengths of the musicians. Mm-hmm. And that's my first move into the studio, is making sure I know the strengths and weaknesses of the musicians. And when I get to hire the musicians, it's heaven.
Yeah, because you can pick your favorites and stuff.
Pick the guys that are right tools for the job,
So you're going into the studio with the band. You don't know their strengths and weaknesses yet. How do you discover them? Where in that process are you doing this sort of discovery?
Okay, so if I agree to produce a record, terms of me producing your record is, first we are going to rehearse together. We're going to sit together in a room, and I'm going to hear your songs. You're going to play them right in front of me. And we're going to, pick the catalog out of your tunes, and B, I'm going to be able to see who's strong and who's weak, and how maybe we can play on the strengths of even the weak people to make it a simpler part that works for everybody. So there's always, if I accept the project, you have to agree to some pre-production rehearsals, period. If you want to do it in my studio, that's fine, but I ain't going to hit record until we know what we're doing, until we have a roadmap.
I didn't even turn on the power.
They have to sing through those Rudy Valley megaphones.
All right, cool. So I like the way you describe finding this and working from the strengths of the weakest links in the band. I don't remember who explained it, but maybe it was like Malcolm Gladwell or somebody like that, who was talking about if you have a group of people and they're on a hike and somebody's the slowest, what's the fastest way to get everybody to the end of the hike? And it was always for everybody to go back and just hang with the slowest person, otherwise they get lost behind. So I kind of see that as an analogy for what you're talking about in the studio, you know? The whole band arrives at a better result if everybody really focuses on what the person who needs the most attention is doing.
And you don't want to exclude that person. You want to keep them. They're part of what's making that band cool, that you wanted to work with them in the first place, because it's a collection of musicians that create a sound, Nobody ever said, Adam Clayton, that guy is the best bass player ever. But what he does in U2 is very important. He's essentially the rhythm guitar and the bass player, because the edge is echoing all over the place.
Right.
But that doesn't mean he's a bad bass player. He just knows what he does to make that band the best. Right. And that's what you got to help maybe a young band or a band that doesn't realize that understand. I don't ever try to exclude him. I mean, it's really rare that I say, okay, that guy's got to go.
Right.
And the guy's got to be really bad. I mean, it's got to be hurting the overall output of the band.
I have to say, for me, it's kind of rare to do that too. And I don't think I've ever said like that guy's got to go and like he's not coming back. But if you're under a real time pressure situation and you just got to get something done in the next half hour or whatever, those are the times where I might say, I'm going to not pay attention to this one instrument right now because we can address it in the overdub, maybe come back. Of course, we're not, I'm talking about a record where you're going to come back and do some overdubs anyway. Yeah.
To me, it's all or nothing. So, I mean, if I could record a 2-track and get away with it and people be, yeah, we're cool with that, that's what I would do.
I love recording the 2-track. We were just talking about that.
Unfortunately, people know that there's multiple tracks going on. So
yeah. Well, so I like to ask guests to share an inspirational quote on the podcast, kind of get us excited about hitting the studio. What do you want to share with us?
Have a good time all the time. Viv Savage, 1984.
Have a good time all the time. I got two hands.
I got two hands. And that sounds like I'm making a joke, but I'm not. I mean, I really live my life by that statement. If I'm not having a good time in the studio, I don't care how much money is at stake. I'm going to say, look, guys, I might not be the right guy for you. And I want you to have the best experience, and I don't think I can provide that, and you're certainly not providing it to me. So if I'm not having a good time, I don't want to do it. Music is fun.
Yeah.
We are blessed to be in a business that we can actually like our job.
It's true.
And that's really cool. And if you're not having fun and you're hitting a wall all the time, let the money go. Let the project go. Let it go to someone who can do, or, and above that, help them find someone who can work with them. Somebody who think, man, these guys will be perfect with blah, blah, blah. Right. And that guy is going to take and run with him, where I'm just going to be frustrated and turn my wheels. And I tell the musicians the same thing. If you ever feel like I'm not taking you where you need to go, if you feel like the result is terrible, tell me. I don't have any pride issues. I want this to be good for you and for me. I want us both have fun. Yeah. So have a good time all the time. And I really mean that. And I try to apply that across the board beyond the studio as well. It's just, if I'm not having fun, first of all, it's probably my fault for sticking around, or it's someone else's fault, and I need to know enough to leave.
Yeah.
So, and I find that in the studio too. I've turned down projects that we got, maybe 3 songs in. I'm like, here's your money back. We're done here, but if you guys want to go have some drinks, that's cool.
Nice, man. Well, that's insightful and wise, and bold of you to even call it like it is.
I just don't want to be bummed out, man.
Have a good time all the time.
All the time.
Viv Savage. So that was a Spinal Tap reference, rock stars, for those of you who may not have seen Spinal Tap. Believe it or not everybody's seen Spinal Tap.
And make an effort to see it if you haven't.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a little too real.
It is too real. And then, Keith also mentioned the Blues Brothers. Make sure you make an effort to see the Blues Brothers movie too. Well, cool. So, Keith, I also like to share a story, or ask you to share a story about an important failure, something that maybe was a real learning experience, because you've done a lot of great things, but I'm guessing not everything was a trail of roses. Is there such thing as a trail of roses?
I don't know. There's a bed of roses.
There's a bed of roses.
There's a trail of popcorn, Hansel and Gretel.
There we go. Not everything's been a trail of popcorn for you, has it?
I tend to be someone who self-actualizes, meaning that if I want to do something, I will find a way to make it happen no matter what. It's like, so if I decide that I want to open a studio, which I did when I was 20, maybe that's not the best idea. Just being able to make it happen doesn't mean it's the right choice. And I put the cart before the horse. I didn't know enough about recording. I didn't know enough about the business. All I knew is the pats on the back I was getting for recordings I was doing other places and on my Fostex 4-track at home. So I'm like, well, I could do this professionally. I could open a studio. It'll only cost $30,000. It'll be great.
Wow.
You
went for it, man. 20 at 20?
At 20 years old, and I fell flat on my face. And it wasn't due to lack of people wanting to work with me, because, I was around. I was the guy that was always there. By virtue of just always being around, people knew that I was the sound guy at the club, or I did recordings for their friend, and I'd like to do that too. So I had customers, but I could not produce a quality product that A, I was proud of, and B, in a timely or professional fashion that they would expect for the money they'd have to spend for me to pay for my brick and mortar operation.
Right. So that was kind of the path towards failure for you in the studio, was just that you couldn't really put out the kind of quality that you were hoping you could.
I made a cool looking studio and spent a lot of money and lost all 30,000 of it.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, man.
That's okay. It's a life lesson.
Those were 30,000 1980s dollars, 1990s dollars?
That was 1989, yeah.
$1989.
Yeah.
Just before, the whole sort of indie alt-rock boom.
Before ADAT.
Caught on too. Yeah, before ADATs. Yeah.
I had a Tascam 1/2-inch 16-track.
And this was in Philadelphia?
This was in Merchantville, New Jersey, which is 5 minutes from the Liberty Bell over the Ben Franklin Bridge.
All right, cool. All right, so then what about a sort of an aha moment for you? Was there a point at which things sort of clicked moving forward?
You don't know till you know. And there's a couple times that I thought I was having that moment. And it wasn't until I started the label, the Inglehood label, that I realized that I'm trying to make this sound like it's not a control issue, because it's really not a control issue. If you talk to any of the musicians, that I hire to work with Inglehood, I just kind of let them do their own thing. That's why they're there. I picked the right guy for it because I don't have to tell them what to do. And when I found that I could be in charge of the entire creative decision and output, and then share that creative decision with a singer or a musician and say, would you like to be part of this? Then we're all on the same page. We have the best musicians for the job. And then I really loved the studio again because I dreaded it because it was so subjective. It was, I could work 50 hours on something and the band goes, yeah, man, we just didn't play that right. We're going to scrap that one.
Yeah.
But I just worked all these hours on it.
Just look at my edits.
And they're like, yeah. And the label says they don't want it. So we're going to scrap that one. So it was so subjective. It was so, and I personally put my soul into it, so I'm a little bit of a softie that way. I like to put my heart into it. And when I got to eliminate that part of it, when the material was picked ahead of time and the direction of the record was done ahead of time, the artist was on board and the band was on board, that was the aha moment for me. It was like, oh, wait a minute. I could do this. It doesn't have to be the other way. And then the output just started coming and it was great and it was exciting and then it became all I wanted to do. I mean, I became fired up again. I mean, after a crushing blow when you're 20 years old, thinking you're going to be in the studio business and lose everything, and your parents are not happy about that.
Did they get involved in the investment?
They signed with me. They were, they were fools. And but you know what? They did because I believed in it. Yeah. And because I believed in it so much, they did. And they weren't really being foolish. That's not fair to them.
No. But, I mean, as a parent myself and as yourself, we know that like investing in our kids to make a right decision or a wrong decision is a successful investment.
It's a good idea.
Because we have to learn. There's a lot of things you have to do. And if you didn't have parents that had already started their own studio, what were they going to teach you about starting a studio? Yeah. I certainly didn't.
I'm surprised my mom can start a car. So, I mean, starting a studio definitely wasn't in her wheelhouse. But,
both of my parents actually did start their own businesses.
Oh, that's great.
And neither of them, well, I think my dad tried to, suggest maybe Elijah, you should go work for a bigger studio or a bigger business first before you do your own thing. And I was like, I don't want to hear it. It's like, we take what our parents have done and
well, and
we want to repeat the same mistakes they might have had to go through too.
I'm sure you have learned the same thing I've learned in that the music business is snack or famine.
Yes, it is. It's snack or famine.
Yes, there's
indeed. But
you got to
like you said, though, to be able to work on music all day, every day, it's just something rewarding about it. I feel like I've seen this. Obviously there's a side to music that maybe could cause you to age quickly if you're doing the wrong stuff with your time, but most of the musicians I know in Nashville, I feel like, older musicians and studio guys and stuff like that, it's just like you carry on some youth for a long time. There's just a youthful aspect to it.
I'd say 90% of the artists I work with are in their 70s. That's no joke. I mean, from the Monkees and Peter Cetera is 72 and Lynda's only 64, but I mean, most of the Blues Brothers are 70 or older. So they're still got more energy than I do. I mean, they're just, it's music and that's all they talk about and that's all they do and that's all they care about. And, it could be a 6-hour bus ride from Berghausen to Mainz in Germany, right? And the whole conversation is either A, hey, what do you got in your home studio? B, when you're working on your B3, do you are all the relays supposed to go in this order? It's just, if it's not about music itself, it's about the process and mechanics of making music and stories and stories and stories about a great musical experience over the last 58 years of these guys being in the music business.
Nice. That's wild.
So that's exciting for me to hear that because that makes me think, hey, when I'm in my 70s, maybe I'll be as happy as these guys.
I kind of had that epiphany myself this past year or two where I realized that as I get older, I still get to like the same music that I liked, and everybody who's my age will also like that music because we all grew up in it. It's like we only, as kids, thought that they were golden oldies because they were just before our time. For the old people who were enjoying the golden oldies, they thought it was rock and roll. They were digging it.
and I definitely mind the past too. Like I say, okay, I really love the first Boston record. I really love Cheap Trick. I love Led Zeppelin, like everybody, and the Beatles. But my parents really, really seemed to love this Guy Lombardo. Let me see what that's about. So I try to dip into my parents.
Yeah.
Not all things they listened to I liked, but
that's all right. Not all the things that we listen to our kids are going to like either.
Yeah, my son does not get the mambo at all. He likes it okay, but he's like, why are you always listening to Hawaiian music and mambos?
All right, so let's get into that more. Let's talk about your label and the styles that you're recreating. What inspired you to kind of go after this as far as...
It's completely selfish and narcissistic.
Yeah, tell us all about it.
It really is. I just what would be cool? Because I had so much fun making this record for Tommy McDonald. Like I said, he came to town. We knocked it out instrument-wise in about 2 days and some overdubs, and then it was just mixing and putting it out. It's like, wow, this is easy. It's never been this easy. If we planned it out ahead of time and are in control, it's so easy. And I was like, well, we could do anything. It doesn't matter. No one's going to buy. Nobody buys records anymore anyway. There was something really freeing about knowing that no one is going to go, well, here's $10 for your record. It's like, that's over, so I just wanted people to hear it. So I was like, well, what do I want to do? And I said, if, for example, a couple records in, we did a mambo record just because I wanted to do a mambo record. I said, wouldn't that be cool? And then I met a percussionist in Nashville that I thought was of a quality of someone like Alex Cuna or Luis Conte, and his name is Glenn Karuba, and he lives right here in Nashville. And I was like, wow, this guy's as great as those guys, and he's a really cool guy. I want to make a mambo record. Let me ask him. I said, hey, man, I want to make a mambo record.
What is mambo?
Mambo is it's a Cuban beat that is similar to other Latin rhythms, except it sort of has a shuffle behind it. So... and as the shuffle goes straight through it all the time. And it's really cool, and it's good. It was very popular for dances in the 50s, but it was not a huge thing, but people became really aware of it because of Lucy and Desi Arnaz.
Right.
And so it became a little bit more in the eye of the public, and it grew, and then people like Xavier Cugat and Pres Prado all kind of sparked off that in the mid-50s, and then it kind of fizzled out in the early 60s. And it became more lounge-driven, and the Rat Pack thing kind of grew up through that.
Right, cool, wow.
So it didn't have a big shelf life unless you're Cuban, but it was that...
We may have some Cuban listeners as far as I know.
Right on. Keep making mambo, I love it. But it was like this stylized version of it from like 55 to 62 that I really love, this like California Capitol Studio A version of mambo that I said, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I said, Glenn, would you be interested in doing that? And he's like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. So we sat and picked the songs. We did one song that's a little out of character for us. It's called Mambo Mongo, and it's by Mongo Santa Maria. And it's a little more late 60s, early 70s vibe, but the rest of the record is totally straight up.
So they're covers. The songs
it's all
themselves
covers.
Right, okay, cool.
We're not reinventing the wheel.
And that's fine. Let's cover some basics too. No pun intended. When you want to make a record and put it out and it's cover songs, what are the things people need to know about as far as licensing, permissions, things like that?
Well, I use Harry Fox, but there is licensing companies that do a blanket license for a short pressing. And it's just $70 to $90 a song if you don't pick the mega hits. Like you can't go picking Beatles songs.
Okay.
And then and because of the nature of the music business, I never really sweat going over that limited pressing amount, which I think is 10,000 downloads or something like that.
You're not worried about selling more than 10,000 right now.
And if I do, great, I'll be glad to pay for it.
Yeah.
But it's really, as long as you're not claiming that you wrote it and you registered the publishing and you register with Harry Fox, pay the blanket amount, you can record pretty much any song you want if you're willing to pay for it.
And this is if you want to record a song and put it out and release it on a record on your own. Now, if you wanted to record it and just put it on YouTube, do you know anything about that? I think that would be different. I think that's sort of built in to YouTube's own system of permissions.
That's why I have a lawyer.
That's why you have a lawyer, yeah.
Because I'm bad at that stuff.
Yeah.
But I have a lawyer named Skip Brzezinski, and he's a Nashville guy, and he handles that stuff for me.
Yeah.
But I have a basic knowledge of it. I know that I got to pay.
So Rockstars, that is, Keith's talking about an entertainment lawyer. So that's very, very much a Nashville, New York, Los Angeles thing. There is a whole profession of law that really understands copyright law and
The method of
creative.
that copyright recapturing. If you're a songwriter and your copyright's going to run out on a song, they'll help you recapture it for another, I think it's 20 years or something.
It sounds like a video game move or something.
There should be a entertainment lawyer, music lawyer video game where he runs around grabbing copyrights.
Grabbing copyrights, recapturing them. All right. So another record that I believe you put out is Charlie McCoy, right?
Yeah.
Of, area code 615 fame right up here in Madison, Tennessee. Tell us about doing that and working with him.
Well,
and who he is. Introduce us.
Charlie McCoy is probably one of the most recorded multi-instrumentalists in Nashville music recording history. He's in the Country Music Hall of Fame, he's in the Musicians Hall of Fame, and he's in the West Virginia Musicians Hall of Fame.
Wow.
He came up from Florida where he was going to college to take a job playing guitar and singing in a band, and they didn't need a guitar player. So they said, "Can you play the drums?" He said, "Sure, I just don't have a set." So they got him a set of drums, and his first job in Nashville was playing the drums, which he had never done before.
Wow.
He's just that kind of guy. He can pick up and play anything, and I've never met somebody with a passion for music, all kinds of music, so driven and so amazing as Charlie McCoy. He's 75 years old, or he just had a birthday yesterday. This is the 29th of March, so yesterday was his birthday.
Yeah, we just divulged when we recorded this, even though it'll come out on a different date, but it's good.
Well, anyway.
Now you guys know. Now, Rockstars, you know the secrets.
Well, that was his birthday. I think he might be 76 now, and he's amazing. But he's most famous for being an incredibly prolific harmonica player. And he played the harmonica on The Boxer with Simon and Garfunkel. He played on Roy Orbison records, Bob Dylan records. He's on 6 Bob Dylan records, playing all kinds of instruments.
Wow.
Bob Johnson, who produced those records, was a friend of Charlie. And whenever you needed somebody to play something, he goes, "Well, Charlie can play it. Just get him in there." And he would play bass. He played trumpet. You know, I can't remember the actual title of the song, but "Everybody Must Get Stoned." Dun, 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 dun. That trumpet is Charlie McCoy.
Wow.
I mean, so he's an amazing musician, legendary in Nashville. Everybody respects him. He's a great singer. He wrote the song "Funnel of Love," which Cyndi Lauper just covered again.
Nice.
It's amazing, talented guy. Cherry Berry Wine was his first hit when he was 18. He was singing and playing guitar, a rockabilly hit.
Okay, so how did you already knew him? You'd been working with him, or did you just sort of reach out to him?
For a short time, I was technical director for the Country Music Hall of Fame. And a rewarding job, but the road called to me and I left. I have a wanderlust for the road. So yeah. I worked with him there and it was a treat, pleasure, super great guy. And then out with the Blues Brothers, there's another virtuoso harmonica player that plays the Blues Brothers named Rob Paparozzi. He's amazing. He's an internationally renowned harmonica player. And I said to him, "Hey man, I had this great idea. Let's do a Harmonica Cats style record where you play a bunch of harmonicas with a band and we'll do all Henry Mancini songs." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That might not be for me. I don't think I want to play all those parts." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So then I still had this idea in my head. And my friend Bruce Geitcht, who wrote Ese Bonita for Madonna and Don't Mean Nothing for Richard Marx, a great songwriter and guitar player, he lives across the street from Charlie McCoy. I said, "Hey, can I get Charlie's number? Or maybe you could ask him if he'd be interested in making a harmonica record of Mancini tunes." He goes, "Ask him yourself." So he gave me the number. I called him up. We met for lunch, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
That's great.
And that's it. I mean, it was that easy. It's just having the idea ahead of time, organizing a great group of musicians to be part of it, and inviting the artist. And if they share the vision, it's all magic, man.
Yeah,
and
you're not
it's
trying to convince
exciting
anybody after that.
and fun.
Tell us about Henry Mancini.
Henry Mancini was a popular songwriter and musician who was most famous for writing TV and movie soundtrack songs. Breakfast at Tiffany's, Moon River, the Pink Panther theme.
Nice.
And one of my personal favorites, the theme song from the 70s TV show What's Happening.
That's not wow or one.
That's that one. Hey, Roger, no rerun, no rent.
What is it? Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey. Dwayne Wayne would say, hey, hey, hey.
Oh, yeah. Awesome, man. Well, so now talk a little bit about budgeting for an album. You already sort of joked about how records don't sell, but I'm guessing that you didn't just create a new hobby for yourself, that you're trying to, now with understanding, having done this, you're trying to create something that will work and sort of have a beginning, middle, and end.
I learned about budgeting records from when I was producing records for BR549 and Crush Point and other people like that, because that's part of being a producer is you know what kind of money you're working with, and
tour managing too,
right? Managing, and you have parameters that you want to try to stay within so it stays profitable. But the joy of having your own space to record is that you take that money and you put it where it matters, and that is the musicians. You know, and I have, like I said, I have the most basic recording setup ever. I only mic the drums ever with 2 mics, one on the kick and an overhead. And, you know, it's not about all the buttons and bells and whistles. It's about these incredible musicians who come in prepared, and they have a good sound. They've been spending years making themselves known for their sonic abilities and their musicianship.
What about my buttons, bells, and whistles? Are they all right?
They're very nice, but I have no room for all that.
No, I'm with you, man. It's pretty amazing when you work with a really talented musician.
Yeah, I mean, you put the microphone in front of a musician who plays great, it's going to sound great. Yeah. And that's all there is to it.
And there's a thing that you're doing by choosing particular stylized records. It's almost like there's a language that when the musician steps in, they get what the story is about.
They know that, okay, they know ahead of time, they'll get MP3s of the songs. So we have a really great roadmap too, which is cheating a little. So we already have, like, say, we did 1 Mint Julep for a girl named Laura Mayo. And we kind of looked at the Quincy Jones arrangement of 1 Mint Julep, and we took the favorite sonic parts of that, which is like blatty trumpets. Blatty means pop, 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 real hot and loud and splashy, and low brass that echoed, da, da, da. And we said, okay, we want to make sure those elements are in our arrangement, because that's what we really like about the upbeat vibe of this Quincy Jones arrangement. That's the coolest parts of that. But we like the vocal style and delivery from this other recording we heard. So we take the best ideas of recordings of the material that we picked, and we kind of make, you know, what they call it? Mashup? Is that what they call it now?
Mashup, yeah.
I think my son says that, mashup. So we take a mashup of all our favorite ideas, some modern, some old, and kind of put it all into our arrangement. And
are you guys, with these particular musicians?
So we have a roadmap and a vibe the musicians can attach to, and I keep them involved. Like, I ask their opinions. I don't just go, here's the stuff and you will do it. I call them up. What do you think? Well, what arrangement do you like? You know, everybody is part of it. It's a team.
That's great.
And we try to use the same musicians as much as we can, but sometimes they're on the road, or sometimes maybe they're not the right tool for the job, but they understand that their feelings aren't hurt.
Do we want to give shout outs to some musicians, some of our favorites?
I'd say the core Inglehood rhythm section is Martin Linz, James Haggs Haggerty, Micah Hulsher, Randy Diego, and Joe McMahon. They are the bunch of guys, backbone of the whole thing. And we have other musicians as well, like Aaron Mortensen, John Radford,
That's great drummers.
Vinny Chaleski, Roy Agee. There's a lot of, but they're all Nashville musicians. And then we have some guest stars like Blue Lou from the Blues Brothers and John Tropea, who played the guitar solo on Diodato's 2001: A Space Odyssey, and is also the acoustic guitar on Kiss's Beth. I mean, it's amazing. He's the guitar player on 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, and he guested and played some jazz guitar solos. And then Paul Lyme and Shane Keister, some really legendary studio musicians. Joe Chimay, who sang all the harmony vocals on Pink Floyd's The Wall, came in and guested on the records, you know, and they all get paid. Nobody's volunteering. You know, everybody gets paid, limited pressing scale. They can put it on the union card if they want, because I'm actually paying them a little more than that.
Wow.
I think I'm paying like 10, 15% more.
All right. So where does the funds come from to make a record like this?
My pocket.
All right.
And
do you plan to put money back in your pocket?
Well, that would be great. But I'd do it because I love it. But what it's become is a calling card, which has led to other projects. Right. So I've produced 4 records off the strength of the calling card of the body of work of the label, which shows a consistency and a wide stroke of the brush of styles, but still all within the same genre of this classic style of recording live, as it's happening, warts and all recording.
Are you guys pressing to vinyl?
If I could afford it, I would.
Seems like,
but there's no audience to buy it. So it's not like a touring artist who can, like these bands are
right. You'd
put
have
together,
to build an audience.
And then we record it. And then, sometimes Charlie McCoy, I know, is selling his CD, and Tommy McDonald sells his CD on the merch table with the Blues Brothers. But some of the other artists just don't have an outlet to sell products. So it's just not financially.
Yeah.
But we do make CDs. So there's a physical product and buttons and posters and things like that. So there's physical things you can buy, but then it's all available on streaming services. It's really, I just want people to hear it.
Yeah.
That's really more important than anything to me, is that I want as many people to hear this music as possible.
Well, it's great. I mean, that's why we got into music in the first place, right? I don't think anybody chooses a career in music to make money. Well, maybe some people do, but not me.
But financially, the idea is that I could have bought a boat. I could have bought a cabin in the woods for vacations. I could have dug a hole, put money in it, and set it on fire. But I chose to spend it making music with my friends that I really care about. And that's led to other things. It's led to making the recordings, mixing and mastering the music for Sun Records, producing records for people like Dunne and other opportunities that have come along as part of the process of people hearing what we do, this classic style recording, and say, can you do that for us?
Let's talk about the Sun Records thing. Tell us about that project.
The music producer of the series is Chuck Mead, and we cut about 90% of the music tracks that you hear of the live performances on the show at my home studio in Inglehood. And we overdubbed about 50% of the lead vocals at my house, and about 50% of the lead vocals at Scott Bomer's studio, Electrophonic, in Memphis, where the show was shot.
Right. This is Sun Records of Memphis.
Yeah. It's shot in Memphis. We do all the music here in Nashville. We're utilizing the same group of musicians that we use for Inglehood Records, as well as others like Dave Rowe, and even a tuba player.
For listeners, give us a brief introduction of Sun Records and what the whole
Sun
concept
Records is
about.
a docudrama on CMT, airs on Thursday nights. They are 8 one-hour episodes that are following the earliest roots of Sam Phillips' recording history in Memphis, Tennessee, and the earliest efforts and recordings of people like Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash. And at the beginning of the series, not a one of those stars are recording. It's Jackie Bredston with Ike Turner. It's Joe Hill Lewis. There's these other musicians and B.B. King that were the backbone of Memphis music in the beginning, and that Dewey Phillips exploited in a positive way for his Red Hot and Blue show that was from the radio station in Memphis at the time, and how that soup all sort of steeped together, and then Elvis and Jerry Lee and Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins all came out of that soup. They all boiled to the top. Yeah, wow. And that's who you know today as the artists that were made famous by Sun Records.
That's wild. And do you know Matt Rossbang, who's working from Sam Phillips recording now?
I have met him once. I do not know him, but Chuck Mead is they did a lot of recording work with Phillips Recording. I think it's called Phillips Recording now.
Yeah.
Phillips Studio.
Yeah.
That they did in conjunction with the show, because the family is still involved in the studio.
It's cool. No, Matt had been on the podcast before. I think you'd really dig him.
Yeah, Chuck and him are pretty tight. And I think Margot Price just did a new record out there with him.
Yeah.
Which is great. She's great.
Yep. Actually, co-produced by Alex Munoz Guijarro, my old roommate here.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
So that's cool, man. What an awesome project to be part of. So well done on that.
It's fun.
Let's dig into some studio stuff. Let's geek out for a minute more.
Okay.
You record a lot of horns. What do we need to know about recording horns, recording horn sections? How do you do it?
If you don't record them as a section, you're cheating yourself. You might as well use a keyboard. There's something about the give and take of multiple musicians. If you need 2 trombones, have 2 trombone players. If you need 2 trumpets, have 2 trumpet players. And it's okay to stack that existing horn section on top of each other. But if you got 2 trombone parts, if you can afford it, get 2, and having them all play together as a section where they can share ideas and work off each other to make it a really cohesive sound. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
And I record the Barry sax with the rhythm section, because I use, in the way I approach these recordings, the Barry sax to me is part of the rhythm sections. It's right there with the bass. Doom, bum, ba-da-da-dum, bum,
Right, yeah.
ba-da. And if recording with the rhythm section keeps that tight. And then all the high horns and low brass go on at the same time on top of that.
Okay, so I'm doing a recording session. I'm new to this. There's a Barry sax player. The rest of the horn section is tracking live with the band or coming in to do an overdub?
If I had enough room to have them there when we were cutting, the high horns would be there. But I record in essentially a 9x12 room, a 10x12 room, and a 16x12 room.
Okay, cool. All three rooms at the same time, or one of them,
all
depending on
time.
which one you're
So
sleeping
the drums are in the biggest room. There's my son's room, which Keb Mo dubbed the Star Wars Lounge, because there's a lot of Star Wars toys in there. That is our ISO room for upright bass or acoustic guitar. The Barry sax goes in the attic.
Okay.
There's a ladder to the attic, and the Barry sax player climbs up there, and I hand him up his saxophone.
Is that Randy?
That's Randy Liego.
Yeah.
And everybody else is in the control room. We just got a new, thanks to Randy Liego, we just got a B3. And I put on the other side of the attic, I put the Leslie. We put it up in the attic.
Oh, man. I
so
did
now we can
like
cut B3 live with the band without it bleeding.
That's cool. All right. So then what mic? So let's say we've got the horn section, and I'm like, what mic should I use?
This is where I'm going to show my...
Hey, if you're making great sounding records, we just want to know.
This is where it's behind the guy behind the curtain. It's a handful of 57s and one Violet mic, which was an offshoot of another company.
Blue or something, yeah.
And it's a hand-wired point-to-point mic that I got from Bruce Geitsch and Richard Marks and Janie Kluwer. And then I have a $99 AT mic that I got at Corner Music Retail.
Okay.
And I have a CAD kick drum mic that I got for free like 15 years ago. That's my kick drum mic. And I have two little CAD condenser mics that I got for free with that kick drum mic.
Well done. And so you're using what you got, right?
And well, I'm cheating. There is one other thing that Roxanne from Audio Technica provided to me, and that is an AT350, which is a small condenser mic about the size of the end of a pencil on a bendy shock mount, and it goes all the way down to 60 hertz. You can set the roll off where it rolls off, I think, at 100. And I'll use that for horns. I'll clip all those to the horns so they can all play at once, and we shoot into a bunch of blankets on, like fleece blankets on boom stands.
Interesting. So that just keeps it from getting too wild and echoey in the room, right?
Well, you can always make a big room sound small, but you can't make a small room sound big. So I try to eliminate any room reflection for the horns so I can make it sound like they're in a much bigger space.
Interesting. You can always make a big room sound small, but you can't make a small room sound big. There's a quote right there. We'll make that a tweetable quote later. All right. So let me see. What else do I want to ask you? Marketing. I guess we kind of talked about that. You know, you sort of almost avoided that a little bit. But what plans, despite the state of the music industry, what ways do you attempt to sell records and market stuff now? How do you like to promote it and get it out there?
Social media is important. We get to do things like this, like a podcast. We also have a podcast on our website where I totally take advantage of my famous friends and interview them.
Yeah.
And put them on there. And we don't do a podcast that's as serious as this where we can constantly keep updating material, but when something cool happens, we'll do the interview and put it on there.
I like that as a title for a podcast, My Famous Friends.
Yeah, there you go. I'm very fortunate that I work with a lot of famous people, and I take advantage of that, and then they spread the word for me. And local paper and just word of mouth, you know. Like I said, a couple artists sell the product of their shows. But the marketing idea was never to be a successful label that sells product. We thought maybe we could license some of this material for television and film.
Yeah, why not?
That seemed to fizzle. We really didn't.
Maybe that's why not, because it fizzled.
It didn't really seem to take off. The controversy was that we didn't write the material. So if you want to license music for film and television, you're better off if you own the publishing and the master.
Right.
So write stuff, guys. Write music. But we didn't do that. We weren't trying to break a new artist or create a new thing.
Or do sound-alikes, you know.
Yeah, we just wanted to do what we liked.
All right, well, let's talk about recording the drums. I know you're sort of saying you've got the mics you've got, But where do you like to put the mics now when you're recording drums? I mean, like for a kick drum, how do you prefer a kick drum to be recorded to sound right for your
because
records?
of the nature of my house and it's hardwood floors, I have a little piece of carpet I put under the drums. I have a TV, like most people do these days, mounted on the wall, flush mounted on the wall. I throw a blanket over that. I put the drums so they fire into the short end of the room, and the drums all point at the drum kit and past the drum kit to the larger part of the room, so I don't get a wall reflection. So all the mics point towards the long section of the room, and we are in the short end of the room.
The mics point towards the long section. Interesting.
Yeah,
so what
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear any slap off that wall. I want to. It hears the air, the space behind the kit, as well as what's in front. Yeah. And because I'm in a small space, I close mic with the least amount of gain possible, anything I can. But drums, I do the opposite. Drums, I try to get the air of the room and the sound of the hardwood floors. I have a kick mic that's usually about, if it's a closed head, it's about 4 inches off the beater. If it's a head with a hole cut in it, I put it just kind of halfway in and halfway out of the hole, just the element portion, not the whole mic.
Okay, so you said if it's a closed head,
I go 4 inches off the head and I stay close to the rim.
So, but it's off the front head. It's not on the beater side of the drum.
Side.
Okay, all right.
It's only 2 mics. So, and I do not tape down drums. Drums are instruments. They ring. I do not gate them. I do not put compressors on them. They have air. They move. They breathe. They ring. They go doom. That's okay.
Yeah,
it's supposed to. And then I stick my head in the kit. So I'll have the drummer play, and I'll move my head around the kit, trying not to get hit by sticks.
Right.
That was me moving away from the mic to indicate I was moving around.
Right.
And then when I find the spot where I think the kit sounds the best, that's where I stick the mic.
Nice. So that's your one overhead kind of. It's sort of this, we did a drum recording clinic here recently with a lovely name called Rock Stars of Drums.
Nice.
And we had Mike Radovsky here, and one of the things we did was we did a whole series of one mic stuff. So we actually had an assistant out there just plug in a mic and then just kind of move it around to different spots. And so on the video, when you watch it, you can hear how it sounds different and all these different, a few inches this way or that way, and it's a totally different thing, which is really cool. And when you find something with a really great character, a single mic sort of in the vicinity of the middle of the drum kit can sound super cool.
And if you wind up going to Inglehood Records and listen to any of our recordings, that's all an overhead and a kick. And they sound present and in your face, just like any other guy who put 25 mics on his drums.
Nice.
I put less mics on my drums now than I did when I was 17.
What if you have a crappy drummer playing on it?
Then I help. I've tuned many a drummer's kits for them.
All right, let's talk about that, man. Talk about stepping in to sort of, help out that weak link in the band if it was the drummer.
If it was the drummer. Well, hopefully first and foremost, it's not a time issue. Hopefully he can play in time. That's number one. And then the second thing I worry about is if he's not using a kit that I provided, which is actually something new for me. I always had people bring their own kits before because, like I said, I record in my house. So there's not a lot of room for stuff. And my son has graciously learned to watch cartoons over a drum kit.
Nice. So you've got a house kit, and that way people don't have to bring in a bunch of stuff.
Now I can kind of keep my the reins in on the sonic quality of the drums I like. They're unfinished drums with thin shells that ring. With very dark heads that kind of go doom, doom. So, but before a drummer would come in with messed up, I would actually go spend the money and buy new heads. Say, okay, we want to start fresh and get the heads that I thought would be most appropriate for the kit. That has happened in the past. And then the drummers that I can really trust that come in with great drums, they're there because I hired them because they have great sounding drums.
Let me ask you just for a sec, interject with questions about heads. So you've got thin sort of clear heads, you've got thin uncoated heads, you've got coated heads. What's the difference between those sonically for you?
Well,
what's the meaning?
Back in the 80s, Alex Van Halen had a lot of octatoms and rototoms. And to me, a clear plastic head on a drum kit tuned inappropriately high makes everybody sound like they're playing rototoms.
Right.
And that's not a sound that I like. I like a classic sound. I like the sound that we're all familiar with from the Beatles and from Led Zeppelin are coated heads. And, that Eagles Dead Thud, Fleetwood Mac Dead Thud drum sounds are all coated heads.
Mm-hmm.
So the coated heads don't mean dead. Coated heads mean they have a warmer character, whereas a clear head is a doom, more of a more attack-driven sound,
Right.
and less of a full hit sound.
Right.
So to me, that's the biggest difference. A coated head, you hit it, thump, and you hear all of the sonic quality of the head, whereas a plastic pinstripe head, you hit it, doom. It's more about attack than it is the release of the material with the shell.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's what I find the biggest
and
difference.
maybe attack is useful when you're trying to compete against a whole bunch of loud guitars or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, my nephew has a band called Elisana. They're a screamo emo band. They sold a poop ton of records and they're famous all over the world. And all their guitar sounds are direct, and all their drums are either programmed with like that pinstripe clear head sound, or it's a guy playing cranked up pinstripe heads, and that's what works for them, And I don't know, I can't speak for Lars, but I'm imagining Metallica is a clear head kind of band.
I don't know, but yeah,
Sounds
maybe
like
so.
it.
Yeah. A lot of program drums too. I think in the early
to
records.
cut through a lot of noise and chaos, I guess you need a drum that's more attack than body.
Yeah,
but I try to stay away from that kind of music.
Let me just ask you about vocals, and then we'll take a break and come in for the jam session.
Okay.
What advice do you have for getting a great vocal recording in the studio? How do you get the most out of a singer? What do you do with the mic? Do you have to choose between different mics?
Well, I have two. It's either going to be the $99 AT mic, or it's going to be the Violet.
Okay.
That's the only two mics I have for vocals, so it's going to be one or the other.
All right, cool.
And I just kind of, I guess when I have a softer vocal, it's more whispery, I'll use the AT mic because it can't take the SPLs that the Violet can take. But I got a more booming, and I've borrowed some mics to try different things for louder singers. But, it's just knowing where to put the person in relationship to the mic and getting them to sing consistently and to get the best performance out of a musician, a singer. They're there because of somebody likes the quality they have. So don't try to craft them into a different singer.
Right. Okay.
So to me, if they're in front of me to record, somebody liked what they did, or I liked what they did, either way. So you don't want to change that quality. Why are they there? So to me, you in time and in tune. So I just make sure that they go all the way up to the note they're trying to hit, and they go all the way down, and that they phrase and sing in time.
Yeah.
And as long as you do that, you can make anything work. But if they're just singing all over the place out of time, and they're singing right in the middle of their vocal range, there's nothing interesting going to come out of that vocal. It might sound okay, but it doesn't sound great.
That's interesting. That's good advice too. What about, are there differences between the way you want the singer to interact with the microphone when they're on stage versus how you want them to interact with the microphone in the studio?
No, you know what? It's about the same. I want that mic a few inches from their mouth, and I want them to project. In the studio, I'll go for special effects by having people get close to the mic and do things like this. And I'll help teach them how to get the best sound out of that by overmodulating the mic closely in a quiet tone. But...
Do you ride the mic pre-level during a recording at all?
I have.
Old school?
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember Tom Dowd talked about that. You just ride the level up and down.
Yeah, I'm not a big let it ride guy. My hands are always moving the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even on drums?
Not giant broad strokes of the pen, but I'll back gain down a little bit doing a recording and just leave it. Even if it sounds different, I don't care. I just don't want it to distort.
Right, exactly. You can always deal with it later.
Like I said, I'm definitely a warts and all guy. So even if there is some distortion in something, if it was a great performance, I'm going to keep it.
Are you mixing all your records too?
Yes.
What would you like to say about me? I know I said that was the last question, but what about mixing, man? How do you like to get your mixes to sound right for the records you're making out of your studio?
Well,
and what DAW are you using?
For me, I like to use one reverb for all. I don't want to convince people that the snare drum was down the hall.
Right.
It's in the same room. I don't want to convince people that the guitar was, I like to use one reverb for all. And I'm really a big fan of EQing the return of the reverb mechanically.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that in Pro Tools, of course, is what I use. I just use whatever EQ pops up when you hit that one with a 7 next to it.
Right.
I don't even know what it's called, but it's the one that comes with every Pro Tools.
EQ7.
Sure, the EQ7. And that's what I do. And I love plate reverbs. I'm very guilty of that. That's the ones I use the most. But that's it. For me, I EQ out the bad sounds. If something sounds bad to me, I shave it too, but I really kind of leave things alone. I just kind of put everything. We mentioned Chad Brown before, my neighbor. Since he is my neighbor, he comes over a lot while I'm mixing to see what I'm doing. And it drives him crazy that I'm not riding faders during the mix. Like, I get it all where I think it sounds good, like on its own. Now I'll grab sections of audio and turn it up or down within the wave, within the track.
Okay, right.
But I don't ride faders a lot. I mean, I have done it, but I try not to. I want it to just sound like it sounded when I was standing in front of it.
Yeah.
I wanted the natural dynamics of the musicians to come through. I don't want to correct what they did. I hired them to make those dynamics, so I want them to shine through on their own.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like mixing that way. I just finished mixing a jazz record with that same attitude for the entire thing. I just wanted to strike a balance and let them play.
Yeah, that's to me, that's cool.
Yeah. A detail about adding a reverb, and just something that's worth pointing out, rock stars. Many of you will know this, but sometimes people who are starting out may not understand this yet, but people will take reverb sometimes and they put it on each track thinking they're adding reverb that way. But in your case, I think you're doing it sort of the traditional way, which is let's put a reverb on an aux return and we'll send things to that reverb, right?
And then I EQ and manipulate the return to how I want the reverb to sound overall in the mix. I find if you put reverb on in the individual channels, you color the sound that you spend so much time recording the way you wanted it. And then let's say maybe all reverbs aren't so awesome, and you color the sound in a way that kind of took away the quality that you worked so hard for.
Right. You're stacking a lot of that reverb.
So if you build the verb
sound,
behind the mix to support the mix and not create the mix, it doesn't get overwhelming.
Yeah.
And the time stays consistent.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, rock stars, we're going to take a break and we'll come back in for the jam session. We're going to have links to everything we're talking about here with Cowboy Keith Thompson at the show notes, which you can find at rsrockstars.com, and then just search Keith. And if you enjoyed the music, listening to the intro of the podcast, go check that out at skadooshmusic.com, SKADOOSH music.com. All right, we'll see you guys in the jam session. Cheers. Hey everybody, it's Lyd Shaw, and I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of Recording Studio Rockstars. I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate your time. And as a way of saying thank you, I've created a special mix tutorial just for you, Rockstars, totally free, called the Mix Master Bundle. With it, you get over 2 hours of detailed videos watching over my shoulder as I mix a song in my studio. Plus, I give you the free ebook that explains how I recorded the tracks, and you get downloadable multi-tracks so that you can practice your mixes, including the Pro Tools session file, using nothing but stock plugins in Pro Tools, all of which you would find in any other DAW, whether you're on Logic or Studio One or Reaper. Maybe you're struggling with trying to improve your mix technique, or maybe you just simply don't have access to multi-track files or can't record a full drum set in your studio. I wanted to give you a chance to create your own mixes from full drum kit, bass, and guitars recorded in my studio. The song is called American Winter, and it's off my instrumental record Skadoosh, and it's all available for you totally free right now. All you need to do to get it is text Mix Master Bundle to 33444, and I'll send it directly to your email. Again, that's Mix Master Bundle with no space to 33444, or you can go directly to mixmasterbundle.com, enter your email, and I'll send all the files directly to you. Thanks so much, rock stars. We'll see you guys in the jam session. Cheers. Hey, rock stars, we're back. You're listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. We're just getting ready to hit the jam session with our guest today, Keith Thompson, Cowboy Keith Thompson. And we're going to jump into the jam. Are you ready to jam, Keith?
Let's jam.
Cowboy. Sorry.
It's okay.
All right, man. When you started out in recording, what was holding you back?
I spent too much time trying to please the people that I was working for by bending to what they wanted without helping guide them to have what they have already.
Those people.
Well, I wanted, I was young and everybody wants to be accepted and have friends. So when I said, you know what, guys, it might work better if we did this, I realized that they were okay with that. Not you should do it my way, but here's another thing we could do. And they would consider it and try it. And if it worked, they were excited about it. And I was just bending to whatever anybody wanted. Yeah, you want Marshalls on 105? That sounds great. Let's do that. You want every drum you own in your drum kit? Let's do it, because I wanted to please them. And when I started to offer other avenues that might help the situation, I found that people were very open and accepting to it. About do not tell people, do it my way.
Right.
Ever.
It's just, here's another way that you could consider. Take it or leave it.
Because you know what? Their way could be way better than what you think. But providing other options and different paths, I was afraid to do it. And I just wound up making a bunch of shitty recordings where I let the inmates run the asylum.
I find that as I get older, I'm thrilled to discover all the times when somebody else is right and I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It's like I expand my knowledge so much more when I discover somebody else's way of thinking.
Definitely not an ego thing. It's not my way or their way. It's another way. And if it works, great. If not, they must stick with what they really want to do.
Because guess what? As soon as I learn your way, it's now one of my ways too.
I've appropriated your skills.
I have appropriated your skills indeed. All right. So now how about sharing some of the best advice you received?
We talked about it a little earlier, but it was put your ear in front of it.
Even when it's at 95 decibels?
Sometimes you have to.
You can always stick your finger in your ear.
Not for long. But no, I mean, basically, the microphone is an extension of your ear. And a very simple way of putting it is an extension of your ear. It is a membrane that moves just like you have a membrane that moves.
But don't put phantom power on your ear, though, directly.
On your ear. And that was the best advice I ever got. Because once I realized that I'm not just putting a microphone in front of something, it's hearing what that instrument or amplifier or trash can lid you're banging on, whatever it is, there's a spot that sounds the best, and you have to take the time. And the best way to hear what that mic is doing, especially if you're by yourself, which 90% of the time, I don't have an assistant. I don't really have a control room. The people are in the control room with me. So I have to go and physically put my ear in front of it. That's how I find it.
Yeah. Well,
and it was Harold Bradley that told me that.
To go out, move a mic, then go back into the control room. Hey, play, listen to it. Okay, do I like that or do I not like that? Then go out and move the mic. Again, it's a really slow feedback process. Whereas if you can just put your ear out in front of something, you get instant feedback about whether it sounds good.
And it's more real that way, I think. It's more, it can't get more analog than your ear.
Do you ever try this trick too with doing the same thing but doing with headphones, where you're in headphones in front of somebody and you move the mic around and just kind of trust what you're hearing in the headphones?
Yeah, I think I trust my ears more than the speakers in the headphones, more than AKG's speaker department.
Nice.
I've done both. Sometimes you get stuck and you try everything. It's like, why can't I get this to sound good? But I say 99% of the time, I trust my earballs.
I thought you were going to say 99% of the time when you can't get it to sound good, it turns out you hired the wrong musician.
Well, might be that too.
That certainly can happen sometimes. And isn't it amazing when you're working with a great musician, you pat yourself on the back all day for being such a good engineer. When you work with a musician that's just not delivering the right stuff, you just beat yourself up intensely for being the worst engineer ever.
I'm so bad at this. I'm giving up.
All right. Now, how about sharing a recording tip, hack, or secret sauce? Something our listeners, the rock stars, could use on their session today.
We were just talking about it 2 seconds ago. Musicians. Spend every available penny of your budget on getting the best musicians you possibly can. Or if this is a home studio recording project where you're starting out and you're new, you pick the best friends that you have that play the best, because that's going to make your day and your end product so much better.
Yeah.
And if you're working with a band, you You want to try to help them be the best musicians they can be.
And it's fun to do that.
It is. It really is. But to me, that's the magic sauce. And I say it over and over again, and I'm accused a lot of false humility. Somebody says, hey, man, your record sounds great. I say, it's the musicians. You can thank them. That's why it sounds great. And like, oh, no, you're doing something. I'm like, I'm really not. All I'm doing is putting microphones in front of guys who kick ass. And that is, those Inglehood Records sound like Studio A. No, these musicians sound like musicians that played in Studio A in 1958. They're that good. Nice. And it's not false modesty. That's the honest truth. I 100% believe that if it wasn't for the quality of the musicians that I work with, that nothing would sound good, period.
Well, you're sort of taking the recording part, the engineering part, and you're trying to remove it from, being getting in the way of making the music so that great musicians just translate to the record.
Yeah, and you don't want to overthink it. You just find the spot that sounds good and put a mic in front of them. I'm using 57s and CAD mics that I got for free in a bag at a trade show. And
it was a bag that somebody was just tossing over the bridge into the river, and you grabbed it.
And I can say with confidence that I think my recordings sound good. Am I the best? Hell no. And there's people that I worship. They're like, wow, they're amazing. How do they do that? But the bottom line is I'm just sticking a $100 mic in front of a great musician. And it sounds great because that musician knows what they're doing.
Nice. All right. So now how about sharing a favorite hardware tool? And when I ask this question, I don't necessarily mean some piece of recording gear. It could just be anything physical that you seem to have on sessions. You're always glad you got it.
A fleece blanket. I like the ones from Dollar General. They tend to be a little thicker.
Okay, cool. And does this keep you warm in your cold control room because you don't have enough money to keep the heat on?
It serves many purposes. And a boom stand set up like the letter T.
Yes, I love the old letter T.
Valuable tool I use every single day. For example, when we were recording the vocals for Sun Records, I asked Darius Rucker from... most famous from being the singer of Hootie and the Blowfish. I said, Darius, would you like Star Wars or Batman? And he chose Batman. So I threw a red fleece blanket and a Batman fleece blanket from my son's room over two mic stands in a arrow shape and put the mic right in the middle so I didn't have any off-access reflections.
Yeah. Those are expensive when you buy them pre-made.
And he did a great job. He sang great and did a good job on the recording. And I like to think that Batman helped him along.
Oh, he totally did. Batman's not selfish. I'm just kidding. Lego movie reference there. So how about sharing a favorite software tool or something that you really, or just something cool that you've discovered recently for making music?
I am not a huge plugins guy. I use the stuff that comes with Pro Tools. There's one plugin that I like and I've moved to using. I would even recommend it. It's the V series by Waves.
Mm-hmm.
They're like brown and yellow.
Yeah, I think it's good. They've got the EQ
sort of like
and
a
stuff.
Classic EQ and tube compressor. And that's pretty much all it is.
V stands for vintage.
I'm guessing so.
It probably does.
But I find that the EQ that comes with Pro Tools, I'm a very visual guy. So when I'm yanking a lot of dBs out of something and that V on that screen starts to look really big, I go,
I must be doing something wrong.
It's not changing. But I find with these V series EQs that I can set my frequency, and if I pull it just a little bit, it makes a lot of change.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I find really, I know this is not going to be popular, but most of the other stuff I listen to, it doesn't sound much different.
Right.
It's just a different,
different little visual look on it.
Visual look at it. I'm like, it sounds the same as the other one. So I'm just really not a very, I use Pro Tools like a tape recorder that the tape is free. And, I don't even know how to make a playlist. I really don't.
Nice.
I just let's do another track. I'll just use that one. And I don't know really how to edit or anything. It's just, to me, I learned on an analog tape machine at a place called Mirror Sound. And, my earliest memories of making records is right. If you know what that sound is, you're old. Or that's the other sound you might know. But that's how I made records. So to me, Pro Tools was just a really small tape machine that can fit on my desk.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's how I use it.
I do know how to do a lot of editing. I know how to do far more editing than is for my own good, but I do enjoy using Pro Tools mostly as a tape machine. I love the process of creating music in the studio, and I'm talking about kind of overdub here, where you can just kind of make a new track, just pan it a little bit, set a level, and just add a new part, or whatever. And kind of build music that way.
That's great. But as far as software goes, that V series is the only one that stood out to me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is doing something.
All right, cool. Well, Rockstar's Waves is get on their email list because they do like this weekend thing where they send out discounts every single weekend for some random.
I think
plugin.
I got one of those EQs for $30.
There you go. All right, now how about a resource for the business side of doing this? Let's say somebody doesn't want to just do music recording for a hobby.
Lawyer.
Okay.
Align yourself with a lawyer that you trust and you like. And it's okay to shop lawyers. That's okay.
What if you don't live in a music hub like Nashville, LA,
you can
or New
contact a lawyer in Music City or LA or New York because of the internet. What a great tool. Hey, I know I sound like an old dude, but this internet thing is amazing. You can do anything.
This is going to be huge one day.
Yeah, I have a lawyer in LA that I use for the TV show. And I have a lawyer in Nashville, Skip Brzezinski, who I use for music publishing and LLC and things like that. And it's a great resource to have someone. It's worth to pay them $50 an hour or whatever they're charging. I don't know what most.
I think $50 lawyers, a minute, maybe.
Probably $50 a minute. It's worth it to prevent falling into a legal trouble in the future, i.e., getting rights to use a song. If someone wants to use your song. Someone wants to use your master recording. Instead of using the internet to try to look it up yourself and screwing it up, call a professional.
Yeah.
It's worth the money.
Yeah. Your time is better spent thinking up the next cool record you should make anyway.
Exactly. It's a great resource to have a good music lawyer.
Yeah. All right. Great tip. How about an organizational online resource? Is there anything you use online that helps you keep your shit together?
Yeah. Well, I use the Gmail calendar. Calendars and lists are really helpful tools. Here's something you can use. It's called a piece of paper and a pen, and you can make a list.
Was there a website link for that?
I think there probably is, Paper and Pen, the website, and also a great file sharing app for sending files across the country, because I do that a lot with the TV show to the editors in Canada, and or getting an overdub from a celebrity friend in New York. For one of the Inglehood Records, etc. And I prefer personally to use Hightail because the other person doesn't have to have a membership to utilize the high megabyte or gigabyte file. They can just download it from my link and that's it.
Yep.
And that link can expire, so they're not sharing it around with everybody else. But that's why I prefer that, because a lot of people don't have a Dropbox professional or paid account and they can't receive the giant files that I send. Yeah. So for me, Hightail is a great resource because it can be a one-way delivery system.
Yeah, well, Rockstar's another struggle sometimes with Dropbox is what he said is so you deliver a file, it's in your Dropbox, and you don't really know when they ever downloaded it. So you don't know when it's safe to remove it out of your Dropbox. And with something like Hightail, one of these delivery services, they get the 7-day window that you don't have to think about it again. You've delivered it, and if they've downloaded it, technically you've delivered the goods.
And it tells you on your web page itself, if you sign in with your password and name, that if they have downloaded it.
Yeah, and that's really
important. Or how many
important.
people have downloaded it.
If
so
it's
you
a
can
client,
know if they've sent it to somebody else. Like, hey, how come this is downloaded 3 times? It's only supposed to go to you,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Great tip. Now we've got a couple of hypothetical questions. First one is, imagine yourself starting all over again, or you're giving advice to somebody moving to a new city. They need a simple setup to record with. They need to find these great musicians, and they got to make ends meet so they can survive and, not have to go become an accountant instead. No offense to accountants.
Yeah, I love accountants because I'm really bad at math.
I'm just starting with a new accountant, actually.
Good. Okay. I say, because this is the answer I thought of, because I was thinking of the question in a different way. Like, what if you were just dropped in a new city?
Right, you dropped on a strange island.
Yeah, exactly. I would have.
Like, what's the deal? There's nobody else on the island. Who am I going to record?
The monkeys can really play drums good.
Oh, you brought up the monkeys twice on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's different monkeys.
I know, but we probably should have talked about that too. Oh, well, I want to make Before we sign off, I want to ask you more about working with Peter Cetera too, because I know that's really
Peter
cool.
Cetera, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, legend. I would have a Zoom H4n, a headphone splitter, and 2 pair of earbuds.
Okay, the Zoom H4n is the headphone box, right?
No, the Zoom H4n is a hard disk recorder that fits in your hand.
Right, yeah.
It has a XY setup stereo mic with 2 different patterns at the end, and it's also a 4-track recorder.
Right.
So I would go find like street musicians and singer-songwriters in coffee shops, record them, and then right on the spot with the headphone splitter and 2 sets of earbuds, you can have them overdub their vocal or another guitar part.
Very cool.
Charge $20 a song, and my goal would be to make $100 a day. So it could be 4 different musicians, right? And you can go anywhere. You could do it on the spot. Hey, man, I got a studio right here in my hand. How would you like to record your song professionally right here on the spot?
Yeah.
Now, you're not going to have reverb and that stuff, but they can demo the song, and you can go anywhere. I mean, you could do it on your iPhone too, but there'd be a lot more crap you have to plug in and stuff. But this thing in your hand and a pair of headphones is great. And that's what I'd do. I'd make $100 a day.
And you just offer them a free sample recording so that they can hear how good it sounds.
Say, hey, look, we'll do a couple bars. You can hear how it sounds. If you like it, $20, I'll do the whole song.
I'll take it another level, right? So you offer to do it, and like the photographer who then sells you the photo even, you say, here it is, give me your email address and I'll mail it to you. And that's where you mail it with an invoice with a hightail link.
Yeah, or you get the $20 up front and email it there.
Already you're making more money than me.
But that's a great idea. Like, hey, you can own this recording for $20.
Yeah.
You know? But think about that. $100 a day, $700 a week for a young guy or girl in a city just goofing around. That's pretty good money. That's over $2,000 a month.
Yeah, that would be great. I would have been thrilled. Okay, so now here's the last hypothetical question. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine here.
Okay.
And you're going to go back in time. You're going to go find young Cowboy Keith, and you are going to tap yourself on the shoulder and turn around. Whoa. It's kind of freaky that you're
I
here.
watch Rick and Morty with my son. This is possible, apparently.
What are you doing here? You say, well, I've come to give you this one bit of advice, young cowboy. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the recording studio yourself one day. What would you tell yourself?
Listen to even more music. Listen to as much music as you possibly can. Everything. Don't shut out a genre of music that you don't understand until you listen to it wholly and find that it doesn't agree with you. Listen to everything. Listen to opera, to rap, to country, to jazz, to lounge music, weird, atonal music from the underground in the 70s in New York. I had a friend, Big Bob Andriano, and Bob turned me on to music that I would have never listened to. And that was the biggest door that was open for me as a teenager. But I could have opened that door wider. I could have sucked in more music and spent more time. And I was already spending all my time listening to music because I love music. You got to love music first before you can make music.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have known more from the start about a broader genre and different sounds of broader avenues of music even within solid genres, like all kinds of jazz, not just the jazz that was easily accessible to me. Dig deeper, find Appalachian music if you like, Old Crow Medicine Show. Go find the music that influenced them, all the way back to the Peel tapes and Bristol. I mean, everything. Just dig deep. There's more layers than the music that's presented in front of you. For me, it started with John Denver. My sister had an 8-track of John Denver's greatest hits in her car. And then I bought John Denver's greatest hits too, which had a song called Calypso on it by Jacques Cousteau, and it had a yodel. And then my dad said, "Oh, here, Sons of the Pioneers yodel." And then I learned about country, and then I learned about rockabilly, and I learned about rock and roll, and I learned about Chuck Berry and how he influenced the Beatles and Little Richard. And I dig deeper into that. Well, who influenced Little Richard? Who influenced Chuck Berry? And I just dug and dug and dug and dug and soaked up all the musical knowledge I could possibly soak up. And I still know I didn't listen to enough. So that's the advice I would give myself, is that there's more music than even what's right here in front of you. What your parents listened to was cool for a reason. Find out why.
Right, exactly.
And broader strokes of the pen, broader strokes of the brush, everything. And ask your friends, what do you listen to that I don't listen to? That's what I would have told myself.
I love hearing that. I've got a young intern here at the studio, and when he arrived, he said the first thing he really sort of got interested in was country music. Now he's making DJ tracks on Logic on his laptop. He's like already expanding his musical understanding, Well, very cool. Keith, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. We've been talking for a good 100 minutes. I'm looking at the screen right now. It's good stuff, dude. You rock, man. Thank you for being here. I love hearing all your stories.
I enjoy the podcast, listening to it, and it's really exciting to be a part of it. Thank you.
Let's let our listeners, the rock stars, know how they can find out more about your record label. How can they go check out all the great music you're making? How can they share it? All that stuff.
Well, you can go to NashvilleSoulMusic.com. That's NashvilleSoulMusic.com. Or you can find the Nashville Soul Music Podcast on iTunes, your favorite, podcast outlet. Check out the website. There's always new stuff on there.
All right, groovy. Awesome. You guys on social media, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff?
There's Inglehood Records on Facebook. And we have I think that's it. That's it.
INGLEHOOD.
Hood. Inglehood Records.
Cool, man. Well, thanks so much, Cowboy.
Hey, glad to be here. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great stories. We'll see you around the studio, and we'll see you over around the neighborhood.
Peter, I'll see you at rehearsal later.
All right, cheers. Thanks, man. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help reach more people. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And if you want more free content, all you have to do is text RS Rockstars to 33444. Again, that's RS Rockstars to 33444, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, and podcast updates. And I'll let you know about any upcoming giveaway offers, all totally free. Thanks for listening. I'm Lynda Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.